1. We're checking out this pretty interesting 1977 Chevy Scottsdale C20 I found on Craigslist for $4,500. Let me tell you, these C20s are getting harder to find, especially in original condition like this one. This heavy-duty pickup is rocking the classic 350 V8 under the hood, paired with an automatic transmission, and it's still keeping that rear-wheel drive setup that these trucks are known for. What's really catching my attention here is that the seller says it's completely original. That's pretty rare for a 46-year-old workhorse. From what the seller's telling us, despite sitting for a while, this old girl starts right up with a fresh battery. The engine's running smooth with no concerning noises, which is always good news with these old trucks, and the transmission is shifting like it should. They're saying it tracks straight with no wandering, which is actually pretty impressive for a truck of this age. Now I've got to keep it real with you. Any vehicle from '77 is going to need some TLC, that's just the nature of classic trucks. But with a clean title and what seems to be a solid mechanical foundation, $4,500 isn't outrageous in today's market for a running and driving C20, especially if you're into original survivors. If you're considering this truck, I'd still recommend doing a thorough inspection underneath, checking for the usual rust spots these old Chevys are prone to, and maybe bringing along a mechanic friend. But hey, they're even open to trades and offers, so there might be some wiggle room on that price. 2. We're looking at a pretty interesting find on Craigslist. A 1960 Chevrolet C10 fleet-side long bed listed at $5,500. Let me give you the honest scoop on this classic pickup. This C10's got the original 235 straight-six engine paired with a 3-speed manual transmission on the column. A true classic combination that really takes you back to the simpler days of American trucks. Now, let's be completely honest about its condition, because that's what you deserve to know. The seller's being pretty upfront about this being a project truck, and there are some issues we need to talk about. There's rust in the floorboards, pretty common for these old trucks, and the front fenders have some filler work. The clear coat is peeling on the old repaint job, and the windshield's got some scratches. The tires are just fair, and while the brakes work, they haven't been properly inspected. But it's not all rough news. The bed floor is in excellent condition, which is actually pretty rare for these old workhorses. And the body is described as very straight, despite a few minor dents. They've made some nice modern upgrades like a new Bluetooth stereo, LED dash lights, and a new speedometer. All the basics work: lights, heater, and wipers, which is pretty impressive for a 63-year-old truck. For $5,500, you're getting a running and driving piece of American automotive history that you can actually use while you restore it. These early C10s are becoming increasingly desirable, and finding one that's both complete and operational isn't easy these days. 3. We're checking out something really special on Craigslist. A beautifully restored 1970 Chevrolet GMC C10 short bed that's listed for $29,950. Let me tell you, this isn't your average classic truck. First off, this is a California-born and raised truck that's been with the same owner, a professional mechanic, for the past 22 years. Being a California truck means one thing that's music to any classic car lover's ears. It's rust-free. That's huge for these old trucks. Under the hood, we're looking at a late 70s 350 Ci V8 that's been seriously upgraded with an Edelbrock high-rise intake, Carter AFB carb, and Hooker competition headers. It's all matched to a turbo 350 automatic transmission. A really solid combination for both reliability and performance. The attention to detail on this build is impressive. They've done a complete brake system overhaul with power front disc brakes, converted to 5-lug wheels, and added a Jazz fuel cell. The blue-green metallic paint looks stunning, and those 15 chrome wheels with 31 Wengs 1050 tires give it the perfect stance. Inside, you're getting bucket seats, a removable center console, tilt steering, power steering and brakes, and a Pioneer radio. Everything's been refreshed: new carpet, door panels, heater controls, the works. Now let's talk value. At $29,950, we're definitely in the higher end of the C10 market. But considering the quality of the restoration, the documented California history, And all the mechanical upgrades, it's actually in line with what fully restored short beds are bringing these days. Plus, it's registered through 2025. 4. We're looking at an interesting find on Craigslist. A 1983 GMC 3500 crew cab listed at $5,800. Let me give you the straight scoop on this workhorse. The main attraction here is what's under the hood. We're talking about the legendary 454 big block V8 paired with the equally legendary Turbo 400 transmission. This is one of those bulletproof combinations that these old trucks were famous for. The seller's pretty confident about the drivetrain's condition, and these powertrains are known to take a beating and keep on ticking. Now let's keep it real. This truck isn't perfect. The seller's listing it in fair condition, and there are some issues we need to discuss. The AC isn't working, pretty common for these old trucks, and the odometer's broken at 172,469 miles. But here's the good news. The seller mentions there's no road rust, which is actually pretty impressive for a 40-year-old work truck. The tires are described as excellent, which is a nice bonus since rubber for these one-ton trucks isn't cheap. Being a crew cab makes it more desirable. These four-door configurations are getting harder to find, especially with the big block TH400 combo. For $5,800, you're looking at a lot of truck here. These old GMC 3500s were built to work, and with that 454, it'll pull just about anything you hook to it. Sure, it needs some TLC, but finding a running driving crew cab dually with a big block for this price isn't easy these days. 5. We're checking out a pretty sweet 1978 Ford Bronco that's listed for $23,500. Let me give you the honest breakdown of this classic SUV. This Bronco's packing the desirable 351 V8 paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a combo that enthusiasts love. Being a California truck for most of its life is a huge plus, as these old Broncos are notorious for rust issues in other regions. Now, let's keep it real here. The seller's being pretty upfront about this not being a show truck. It's what they call a 10-footer paint job, meaning it looks good from 10 feet away, and the seats need to be redone. There's no AC, but that removable top helps make up for it on nice days. The odometer shows 79,000 miles, which isn't bad for a truck of this age. On the positive side, it's got some nice upgrades including a lift kit, newer wheels and tires, and it's equipped with the factory quad front shock setup. Power steering and power brakes are always welcome features on these old Broncos, making them much more manageable to drive. At $23,500 firm, we're in the middle range for classic Broncos these days. While it's not cheap, first-gen Broncos have been shooting up in value, especially solid California examples. The seller's honest about its condition and seems to know what they've got. They're even hesitant to sell it, which often means it's been well cared for. 6. We're checking out a really clean 1966 Chevrolet El Camino that's listed for $19,500. Let me tell you about this beautiful blend of muscle car and pickup. This El Camino is rocking a 327 V8 paired with a TH350 automatic transmission, a combination that's known for both reliability and performance. Being a southeastern vehicle is a huge plus, as these old Chevys often suffered from rust issues in other regions. But this one appears to be clean. The seller's being straight up about this one. They say it looks in person just like it does in the photos, which is refreshing honesty in the classic car world. With 69,500 miles showing, which they believe to be correct, this isn't some worn-out workhorse. It's equipped with power steering and power brakes, making it much more enjoyable to drive than its non-powered counterparts, and it's got Flowmaster exhaust, which probably gives it that perfect muscle car rumble. At $19,500, we're looking at mid-range pricing for a 66 El Camino in this condition. These vehicles have been steadily appreciating, especially clean, rust-free examples. The combination of the 327 V8, southeastern history, and what appears to be excellent preservation makes this a pretty attractive package. The seller's no-nonsense approach with no trades, no games suggests they know what they have and aren't interested in the usual Craigslist hassles. This appears to be a solid, well-maintained example of one of Chevy's most unique vehicles, the muscle car that can haul more than just passengers. 7. We're looking at a 1972 Chevy K10 4x4 that's listed for $29,000, and let me tell you about this classic pickup. The star of the show here is that big block V8 under the hood, paired with an automatic transmission, a combo that gives these trucks plenty of muscle. The sellers put some serious work into this K10, claiming over $30K invested, and you can see where the money went. Let's break down what we're looking at. There's a new 2-inch Easy Ride lift kit, fresh tires and rims, and a new exhaust system. The interior's been completely redone, and they mention the box, bed, and tailgate are in excellent condition, which is actually pretty rare for these old trucks, as they often took a beating over the years. Now, at $29,000, we're definitely in the higher end of the K10 market. These early 70s Chevys have been climbing in value, especially well-built examples, but that's still serious money. The seller's brief description leaves some questions unanswered. We don't know the mileage, the specific engine details, or the condition of the frame and body beyond what's mentioned about the bed. That said, if the work is as good as described, and it's a solid, rust-free example, this could be a turnkey classic 4x4 that's ready to enjoy. These 72 K10s are becoming increasingly desirable, especially with big block power. 8. We're checking out a 1974 Chevy C10 that's listed for $16,000, and let me give you the honest scoop on this classic pickup. This C10's running the classic combination of a 350 V8 paired with a 350 automatic transmission, one of the most reliable powertrains Chevy ever put in these trucks. The seller says both are in great shape, which is always good to hear. Let's talk about what we're looking at here. The interior's been recently redone with new upholstery, and all the gauges are working properly, which isn't always the case with these old trucks. They've put in new brakes with fresh wheel cylinders, so that's a nice safety upgrade. Now, being honest here, it's not perfect. The seller mentions the tires are only in fair shape, so you might want to factor in some new rubber in your budget. The paint, while generally good, has some scratches, but that's pretty normal for a truck that's pushing 50 years old. At $16,000, we're in the middle range for these C10s. The market for these classic Chevys has been strong, especially for clean examples. I appreciate the seller's straightforward approach. They want serious buyers to see it in person before making offers, which usually means they're confident in the truck's condition. These 7387 C10s are becoming increasingly popular as classic trucks, and this one appears to be a solid example with some nice updates. The 350/350 combo is bulletproof when maintained, and having working gauges and fresh brakes is definitely a plus. 9. We're looking at a pretty interesting find on Craigslist. A 1985 Dodge W350 4x4 listed for $3,600, and let me give you the honest breakdown on this old workhorse. This truck's got the 360 V8 paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, which is a solid combination for these old Dodges. The seller's being refreshingly honest about its condition, so let's talk about both the good and the not so good. On the positive side, it's got some nice upgrades: an Edelbrock 4-barrel carb, new alternator, new electric fuel pump with pressure regulator, and brand new Falcon tires. It's equipped with a flatbed, airbags, and a nice toolbox, making it ready for work. The 4x4 system is working well, and it's got a Kenwood stereo for some modern tunes. Now, let's be real about the issues. The transmission's got worn synchros in second gear, and there's a noisy throwout bearing. The windshield wipers aren't working due to bad bushings, and it needs tags. The odometer's rolled over past 135,000 miles, so we're looking at some serious mileage here. At $3,600 though, you're getting a lot of truck for the money. These W350s were built to work, and with the flatbed setup and working 4x4, it could still be a useful rig. The seller calls it an old Dodge with good bones, which seems pretty accurate. 10. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1971 Chevy K10 4x4 listed at $22,500, and let me give you the straight scoop on this classic truck. This isn't your typical 71 K10. It underwent a frame-off rebuild back in 2004, and the owners made some serious upgrades. Instead of the original powertrain, It's running a 97 Vortec 350 paired with a 4L60E transmission, both pulled from a 3/4-ton with about 40K miles. That's actually a smart upgrade, giving you modern reliability with better power and efficiency. The owners put some serious thought into the build. It's got Lock-Right differentials front and rear, great for off-road capability, an NP208 transfer case, and they've added aftermarket AC, a nice comfort upgrade. The steering column's been updated to an 85 model, and it's got a wood bed floor made from 3/4 plywood. Now let's be honest about the issues, because the seller sure is. The 20-year-old paint and clear coat are peeling, and there are some rust patches developing. The odometer's rolled over, but the owners documented putting 42,479 miles on it since the rebuild. At $22,500, we're in the higher range for these trucks, but you've got to consider the extensive mechanical upgrades and the frame-off rebuild. The Vortec 350 4L60E combo is a proven setup, and those Lock-Right diffs aren't cheap. This looks like a well-thought-out build that's been actually used and maintained, not just a pretty show truck. The seller seems honest about its condition and appears to know exactly what they've got. 11. We're looking at something really special, a 1956 Studebaker C-Cab pickup listed for $10,000. Let me tell you, these don't come up for sale very often. This classic Studebaker is powered by the 259 V8 engine, paired with a Borg-Warner 4-speed manual transmission, a pretty robust drivetrain for its era. What's interesting is it's running a 373 12-bolt rear end, which is likely a later upgrade and a solid choice for reliability. The sellers made some smart improvements here. They've upgraded to disc brakes up front, a huge safety improvement over the original drums, and all the brake hardware in the rear is new. The truck's rolling on 4 new tires from 2023, which is always a nice bonus. Perhaps most impressively for a truck of this age, all the gauges are working. Now, being realistic here, the odometer's broken and it's showing 100,000 miles, so the true mileage is unknown. However, the seller notes that the sheet metal is in good shape, which is crucial for these old Studebakers, as finding replacement panels isn't exactly as easy as with a Chevy or Ford. At $10,000 firm, we're looking at a fair price for what appears to be a solid example of a pretty rare truck. These 56 Studebaker pickups are becoming increasingly collectible, and finding one that's running and driving with good sheet metal isn't easy these days. 12. We're checking out a 1965 Chevy C10 custom cab long bed that's listed for $6,750, and let me give you the honest breakdown on this classic pickup. This C10's running a rebuilt 350 V8 paired with a Powerglide transmission, a pretty common swap for these trucks since the 350 is basically bulletproof when maintained. The seller mentions they've had the carburetor professionally rebuilt, which is always good news for drivability. Now, let's keep it real about the condition. There are some issues we need to discuss. The seller's upfront about rust in the common spots and mentions the floorboards are just fair, which typically means they'll need attention sooner rather than later. These old C10s are known for floor rust, so this isn't unexpected for a truck of this age. On the positive side, the white paint is described as looking nice, it's got mag wheels, and most importantly, it runs, drives, and stops. The custom cab trim level adds some nice features over the base model, and being a long bed means it's still got some practical utility. At $6,950, we're actually looking at a pretty reasonable price in today's market for a running, driving 65 C10, especially with a rebuilt engine. Sure, it needs some work to be perfect, but it's described as ready to finish out, meaning you could drive it while you improve it. 13. We're looking at a pretty sweet 1977 Chevy Silverado C10 stepside that's listed for $15,000, and let me tell you about this clean classic. This C10's running the tried-and-true 350 V8 with an automatic transmission, and according to the seller, it's in very healthy condition. What's really catching my attention here is how much of this truck is actually working. We're talking about all the lights, heat, radio, and even the cigarette lighter, which makes a great phone charger these days. One of the biggest selling points here is that it's reportedly rust-free, which is pretty rare for these trucks, especially in New Jersey. The seller mentions the brakes are excellent, apparently better than most modern cars they've driven, which is a huge plus for safety and drivability. The truck's got some nice features, including a wooden bed with a cover, good tires, and shows 81,000 miles on the odometer. The interior and exterior are described as really clean, and the seller states it needs nothing. Always nice to hear about a classic vehicle. At $15,000, we're in the middle range for these C10s, but considering its condition and the fact that everything works, which is pretty rare for a 46-year-old truck, it could be a fair deal. These step sides are becoming increasingly desirable, especially clean, rust-free examples. 14. We're looking at a 1971 Chevy El Camino that's listed for $17,000, though interestingly, it won't be available until February 2025. Let me break down what we know about this muscle car truck hybrid. The star of the show here is definitely what's under the hood. We're talking about a 396 big block Chevy engine paired with a 4-speed manual transmission. That's a pretty desirable powertrain combination. The 12-bolt rear end is also worth mentioning. It's one of the strongest rear ends Chevy ever made, and perfect for handling big block power. Now, I've got to be honest. The seller's description is extremely brief, which leaves a lot of questions unanswered. We don't know the mileage, condition of the body, interior state, or whether the engine is numbers matching. We also don't know why it's not available for another year. At $17,000, we're in the mid-range for 71 El Caminos, but without more details about its condition, it's hard to make a definitive value judgment. The big block 4-speed combo definitely adds value, but potential buyers would want to see and know a lot more before making that kind of investment. These 71 El Caminos are pretty special. They combine the muscle car spirit of the era with actual utility, and the big block versions are particularly sought after. 15. We're checking out a pretty interesting 1978 Dodge W150 4x4 listed for $9,500, and let me tell you about this former military workhorse. This W150 is running the legendary Slant 6 engine paired with the equally bulletproof 727 automatic transmission, a combination known for its reliability. What makes this truck special is its full-time 4-wheel drive system with both front and rear high-low locking differentials. That's some serious off-road capability right there. The sellers put some real work into this truck. Let's break down the fresh components. New carburetor, complete tune-up, new fuel tank with sending unit and fuel lines, fresh fluids throughout, and a new transmission pan gasket. The braking system's been thoroughly updated with a new master cylinder, front calipers, and rebuilt rear brakes. The body's been treated right too. They've sealed it with epoxy primer before applying fresh white paint, and the bed's protected with a Rhino liner. It's sitting on 35-inch tires, which gives it both the stance and the clearance for serious off-road use. At $9,500, you're getting a lot of truck here. These old Dodges are getting harder to find, especially ones with documented maintenance and upgrades. The military history adds an interesting element to its story, and the full-time 4WD system with locking diffs makes it more capable than your average W150. The Slant 6 might not be as powerful as a V8, but it's known for being nearly indestructible when maintained. And paired with those locking diffs, this truck should go just about anywhere you point it. 16. We're looking at a pretty sweet 1965 Chevy C10 short bed that's listed for $25,000, and let me break down this classic pickup for you. This C10's been upgraded with a strong 350 V8 paired with a 700 R4 overdrive automatic transmission. That's actually a really smart combination that gives you both good power and decent highway cruising ability, thanks to that overdrive gear. The sellers put some serious thought into the suspension and handling. They've added drop spindles and a C-notch in the rear for a better stance, plus CPP coil springs front and rear with new shocks. The braking system's been upgraded with front disc brakes and power assist, and they've added power steering too. All upgrades that make this classic truck much more enjoyable to drive in modern traffic. Being an original short bed is a big deal. These are the most desirable body style for C10s, and finding original ones, rather than converted long beds, is getting harder. The seller describes it as a solid truck, which is crucial for these classics as rust repair can get expensive quick. At $25,000, we're definitely in the higher range for these trucks, but you've got to consider all the mechanical upgrades. The 350/700 R4 combo, disc brake conversion, and suspension work aren't cheap, and if done right, they make these old trucks drive much more like a modern vehicle. 17. We're looking at a 1985 Chevy El Camino listed for $4,300, and let me give you the honest scoop on this project car. This El Camino is equipped with the V6 engine, likely the 229 or 231 V6, paired with an automatic transmission. Now, while it's not the more desirable V8 model, these V6 engines were actually pretty reliable workhorses when maintained properly. Let's be completely honest here. The seller's pretty upfront about this being a project car. It's been sitting in their garage for an unspecified time, though they say it fires right up, which is always good to hear. The odometer shows 150,000 miles, so we're looking at some serious mileage here. On the positive side, they mention the interior is clean, which is actually pretty rare for these 80s GM vehicles, as their interiors often didn't age well. It comes with a clean title, which is always a plus for project vehicles. At $4,300, we're in the lower range for El Caminos, which makes sense given it's a project V6 model. These later El Caminos don't command the prices of their earlier muscle car era cousins, but they're starting to gain some appreciation as classic vehicles. This could be a good starting point for someone looking to get into the classic car hobby without breaking the bank. Just remember, any car that's been sitting will likely need some attention to be reliably roadworthy again. 18. We're looking at a pretty clean 1985 Chevy El Camino listed for $15,500, and let me tell you about this well-preserved piece of GM history. This El Camino is powered by the original 305 V8 paired with a factory automatic overdrive transmission. A nice combo that gives you decent power with reasonable highway cruising ability. What's really impressive here is how much of this car is working properly. We're talking about functioning gauges, clock, tach, and even the original AM/FM radio. The sellers invested in what they describe as a high-end restorative exterior finish, and the interior is original and well-preserved. That's pretty rare for these 80s GM vehicles. It's loaded with options too: power steering, power brakes, power windows, power door locks, and tilt steering. Perhaps most importantly, the AC blows cold and the heater works hot. Both big pluses for comfort. The bed is described as excellent, which is important, since these often got beat up from actual use. With 85,000 miles showing, it's got relatively low mileage for its age. The seller notes that while the chrome is showing its age, it's still in nice condition, and they report good brakes, exhaust, and tires. At $15,500, we're definitely in the higher range for 85 El Caminos, but you've got to consider the condition and the expensive paintwork. These later El Caminos are starting to gain more appreciation in the classic car market, especially well-preserved examples like this one appears to be. 19. We're looking at a 1978 Chevy C10 listed for $11,000, and let me give you the straight scoop on this classic pickup. This C10's running a 350 V8 that's got some nice performance upgrades. We're talking about a camshaft, headers, and an aluminum intake topped with a 600 CFM Holley carburetor. It's paired with a 3-speed manual transmission, which is actually getting pretty rare to find these days. Now let's be completely honest here. The seller lists this truck in fair condition, and there are some things we need to discuss. The odometer's broken and has rolled over past 96,869 miles, so the true mileage is unknown. The description is pretty brief, which often means there might be other issues that would need to be addressed. The seller's keeping it simple. They just say it runs and drives, which is pretty basic information for a truck asking $11,000. While those engine modifications sound good, we don't know when they were done or by whom. At $11,000, we're in the middle range for these C10s, but given the fair condition rating and limited information, you definitely want to inspect this one carefully before pulling the trigger. These 7387 square body Chevys are definitely climbing in value, but condition is everything. The combination of the modified 350 and manual transmission could make for a fun driver, but you might want to budget for some improvements depending on what you find during inspection. 20. We're looking at something pretty unique. A 1983 Chevy El Camino listed for $12,500. And this one's got an interesting twist. It's a diesel. Now this is actually a pretty rare find because GM only offered the diesel option in El Caminos for a few years. These came with the 5.7L Oldsmobile diesel engine, which, let's be honest, wasn't GM's finest hour in terms of reliability, but surviving examples are becoming quite collectible. The seller claims this is a preservation rather than a restoration, and with only 14,000 miles showing, if accurate, that would explain its good condition. They're highlighting some key points: new tires, nice interior, and most importantly, no rust. That last part is pretty significant for any vehicle from the 80s. At $12,500, we're looking at mid-range pricing for an El Camino of this era, but the diesel engine and low mileage make it a bit more unique. Interestingly, the seller is willing to consider trades for gold or silver coins, which isn't something you see every day. The description is pretty brief, which leaves some questions unanswered about maintenance history and whether that diesel engine has had any of the common issues addressed. These engines were known for head gasket problems, so you definitely want to check that out.